After that kind of an introduction, first of all, I want to thank Florence Avakian, who has been one of the mainstays of the Armenians at the United Nations for so many years, and without whom I don't think I could have done some of my work. And thank you, Vartan, for that extraordinary introduction. Tonight, I have been a major in political science, but tonight I'm going to speak spontaneously, without notes, something I never do on the radio. And I'm going to spend my 4 or 5 minutes in thanking people who have been instrumental in my work. And so, first of all, of course, I thank God and Christ, in whom I deeply believe. And I want to tell you just a little bit about how I started in this. Vartan, many years ago, approached me and said, would you like to do some kind of something for the radio? And I said, well, I don't know, I'll think about it. And then I started, and I've never regretted 1 minute of my work on the radio. It's been just wonderful. But the spirit of can you all hear me? Yes. Yeah. The spirit of volunteerism that we all do on the radio started basically with my parents. So I want to pay tribute to them. My father, who I lost when I was very young, had just graduated from dental school during the Second World War, and he decided to treat all the servicemen and women for free during the war. And as a result, he received some kind of medallion from President, I think it was Roosevelt or Truman, which is somewhere in my house. And my mother, for 50 years, taught Armenian school, again, as a volunteer. She was also the principal of the school. And I remember that my sister and me had to play the piano and with her sew the costumes for her little children to perform. And from these two wonderful examples, and also from my aunt, I learned that, volunteerism is a wonderful thing to do, and especially for the Armenian people. I also want to thank two religious individuals, two church leaders that had a great impact on my life. One was Karakin I, Catholicos of all Armenians. As a student, he heard that I was deeply interested in Middle Eastern politics. So he invited me to come to the prelacy on Saturday mornings, and we could have a discussion about the Middle East. Of course, he was on one side and I was on the other. My only request was that there be some Armenian coffee when I come. And every Saturday morning, there was that little Armenian coffee waiting for me, and we used to have these vibrant discussions. This is when I was a student. The other great individual that had a great impact on my life was the Patriarch of Jerusalem, Archbishop Tiran Mirzoyan, who I met as an 8-year-old. He was the primate of the Armenian diocese, a gloriously handsome man with beautiful voice and a mind that would put everybody to shame. And he also, as I went through my formative years, he was the one that inspired me to go into writing, to go into politics in the sense of writing about it, and also journalism. I would also like to thank Ambassador Garen Nazarian, who has done wonderful work in the last year and a half at the United Nations. And most of all, I want to thank Ambassador Florence Avakian. Every Friday, I used to go to the mission, and Moses and I used to sit down and discuss whatever was happening in Armenia. Of course, I did a lot of listening. Yes, I did do a lot of questioning, but I did a lot of listening as well. And there's one incident that I want to relate that shows the utter care and concern of this individual. It was during a press conference at the United Nations with President Haider Aliyev of Azerbaijan. Early that morning, Moses called me and he said, "Get over to the UN. Aliyev is going to have a press conference and you have to ask a question." I said to him, "You know, it's very difficult. Half an hour is," he said, "Get over to the UN." I got over to the UN. And this press conference was attended mostly by Azeri, Turkish, and American journalists. I was determined to ask a question, so I sat in the front, wore a red bandana around my head, and kept waving my hand. And they called on me. And I asked a difficult question that involved the autonomy of Karabakh, which is what they were discussing at that time. And I asked him why he would want to have Karabakh under autonomy when they had the pogroms in Sumgait, in Kirovabad, in Baku. I could see his face was getting very red, but I continued, and I said, "Why should the people of Karabakh believe you when you talk about autonomy?" He stopped, looked, and he asked me what my name was. I said, "Avakian." He said, "Savakian?" Now, Savak is the secret police of Iran. I said, "No, Avakian." "Oh," he said. Then he went into a 20-minute tirade with his face getting redder and redder about what the Armenians had done to the Azeris, how they had killed them and abused them and this, that, the other thing. He finally finished. We all thought he was going to have a heart attack because his face was so red. He kind of stormed out of the press conference. And the press conference ended, and then I became surrounded by these mustachioed Azeri and Turkish reporters. I looked out the door, and I saw Moses standing there. Now, he can't come into a press conference at the UN because he was the ambassador. He said to me, "Come, come." So I kind of slowly walked out, and then we walked very quickly through the United Nations. And then 2 weeks of threatening phone calls came in the middle of the night, similar to what had happened when my op-ed piece was in the New York Times on the genocide. Again, in the middle of the night, you get these threatening phone calls. But I got used to that. After a while, you decide to either do your work or you don't. You have to make a decision. And so Moses had a great impact on my work at the United Nations, and he still does, because I still walk into his office at the United Nations. He has a very, very important position there. In fact, he's the highest Armenian official at the United Nations today. And I often walk in and I ask him questions, and he answers with no problem whatsoever. My job is to ask questions. If they don't want to answer, that's up to them. Now, throughout my work, I also want to thank one or two other individuals that have been a great deal of help to me throughout my career. I have worked very closely with a super duper photographer, Harry Kondakjian, who was Harry. He has covered so many important events as a 50-year photojournalist with Associated Press. So it's been wonderful to work with him. And I'm going to say a few words in Armenian. So if I make mistakes, please forgive me. Հայերենով կուզեմ քանմախոս կսել։ Ես ուրիշ գործ բունիմ, որ շատ կսիրեմ։ Սուրբ Վարդան Մարդ Դաջարի եկեղոնահարն եմ, that's a big word, organist, եւ աստեղ նորեն մեր թբրաբեդը հոսե մայստրո Ֆորեն Մեխանեջյան, Իրմեն շահան սորված եմ և թեր սովիկոր ամեն գիրագի. I also want to thank a very important member of my family, which is my sister, who has been not only a sounding board for a lot of the work that I do, but she's been a great support, and she's also a professional writer. So I want to thank her as well. And I want to say, in conclusion, for someone who has been in the news business and works in it every single day, I realize how important news is to reach the people. It's the most vital piece of information there can be. And in my work, I have always realized that it's the question that's important because people know how not to answer. But to ask questions and to get the information to the public is extraordinarily important. And so I want to thank Bartan, I want to thank Adune, I want to thank the two Bayans who have supported us so much. And I want to thank all the volunteers who have worked with us for many, many years. And I want to thank you for coming and paying your respect. Thank you.